everyone again. Jax West from Stephen Avery Project, MAM Gossip, and Justice with Jax. Everybody always asks, who am I? I am no relation to the Avery family. I am just a supporter like all the rest of you that happens to run Stephen Avery Project among a couple other groups to advocate for the wrongfully accused. We last spoke this time yesterday about the latest bombshell in the Stephen Avery case. Kathleen filed that there is a new witness that saw Bobby Dassey on November 5th, pre-dawn, pushing the RAV4 towards the salvage yard. And there was somebody else with him that he described as somebody looking to be in their 50s or 60s, around 6 feet tall, a bigger build, wearing a puffy jacket, and had a long gray beard. I think it said like 8 to 10 inches long. While we were live yesterday, people were fast and furious talking about a guy who it is reported that Bobby had called this man on the day that Teresa Halbach went missing, right? It's on the 31st. Now, when I had read it yesterday, I had said the 3rd, but that's the picture I was sent had a typo. So it was supposed to be Halloween, not early. So now I'm not sure where the information. Oh, Tamara, sup? I have to address that one. Sup, Tamara? And I'm seeing you all coming in and saying hello. And sorry I don't respond to each and every one of you guys as so as I'm talking, the stuff goes by fast and I don't see it. But, okay, so while we were live yesterday is when information was coming in on this certain guy that there's a claim that this guy had been on the phone with Bobby the day Teresa went missing, right? I don't know where the proof comes from that Bobby talked to this man that day. Not sure. So I don't know. Maybe one of y'all could tell me where that comes from. If there is absolute... Bryce, don't be crushed. I still love you, Bryce. I want to know if there's real proof to that and not people just saying that this guy that... Oh, and so here's another Tamara, my cousin Tammy. Hello. I don't know if there's actual real proof that this guy talked to Bobby or that Bobby called him, because doesn't it say that the phone call was like really short, just a couple seconds? So don't know if that is fact, where that comes from. All right. When people were investigating this guy yesterday, he does, in a picture from his Facebook, he's got a long beard, and he is Facebook friends with people like Scott Toddock. So, but is this the guy? We don't know. And so something I wanted to ask everybody out there today is to make sure that you're not jumping to a conclusion and making this guy guilty without knowing for sure. We don't want what's been done to Stephen and Brendan done to somebody else. So I feel it is okay to, because there's so many people who like to investigate this case and find things on it. And it has happened from people who have found things and passed it on to Kathleen Zellner that she didn't know. So it's all good to do this investigating. It's all good to show this guy's picture. It's, I understand all that, but I don't want anybody prosecuting this guy without any absolute proof. Because even if this guy ends up being the guy that was pushing the car with Bobby, we don't know what the circumstances were. We don't know if maybe this guy Bobby's just a buddy and he was pushing the car and he didn't know anything about the case. It would be hard for us to understand people not knowing that somebody wouldn't know that this case was going on, because when they were cited pushing this vehicle, it's the 5th. And Teresa Halbach had been reported missing on the 3rd. So this is 2 days later, and it's been in the press, but this guy might not have watched the news then to see that that this woman was missing or any of that. So when he was pushing the car, if it's this guy or any guy that it actually is, they may not have known they were helping move a missing woman's car. You're pushing a car to a salvage yard. You could have thought that's all you were doing. Now, this case has, really gone huge. So you would think the person would have known, but let's wait. You can come up with ideas and theories, but that's what they are. And it is okay to come up with theories. That's what we do. But until we know something for sure, I really don't want people, prosecuting this guy before we know everything. And I didn't read the whole thing. I had seen Bryce's comment scroll by really fast that it has been posted. I know it was posted in our subgroup, MAM Gossip, that somebody did reach out to Kathleen Zellner about this guy. And Kathleen Zellner did respond and said that she spoke to this particular guy 18 months ago. And then Kathleen has tweeted today that, they're getting an awful lot of tips and they think it won't be long before they are going to be able to release who that other man was with Bobby Dassey. So come up with your theories until then, but let's please wait until Kathleen puts it out there. And then we know that's the person. Okay, we don't want anybody's life having to suffer from this case if they had nothing to do with it, or if there's reasons we don't know, right? So let's wait on what Kathleen Zellner releases to us all. For those that haven't seen the news, so Kathleen Zellner has a witness who says he was delivering newspapers on the 5th. So that was the Saturday. So Teresa Halbach went to the salvage yard on Monday, Halloween. Then on Wednesday the 3rd? What? Wait. Don't make me do math. Okay, so I'm just going to use the numbers. I'm not going to try and figure out what days of the week it was. So then you have, on the 3rd, she's reported missing. The 5th, so early in the dawn hours on the 5th, is when Bobby Dassey is seen by this paper delivery person to be pushing the RAV4 to the salvage yard. And that there was somebody on the passenger side pushing the vehicle as well. we do get a ton of people now that keep questioning this witness on why now? Why has he been sitting on this information all this time? Which again, we don't have all the information. We only have what Kathleen Zellner put out. Period. We have the affidavit. It's not giving us everything that happened. We know that this man saw this early on the 5th, right? He was a little freaked out by it because of the way that Bobby Dassey looked. He didn't have a shirt on, and it's early November, but it was like 45 degrees, right, Bryce? Bryce is the one that looked up what the temperature was then at that time. And so, if you've been pushing a car for a long ways, maybe you're warm, or maybe he's done something and his shirt's covered in something. Don't know, but he's shirtless and pushing a car. And so first the guy turns left onto Avery Road from 147. And so he's seeing the RAV4 is on that when you first turn on to Avery Road off 147. So he then has to go around that car and then turn right, and then the mailboxes are right there, right after you make that first right. And so, but he had seen the car farther back on Avery Road. You know, it wasn't closer to the turn. It was farther back, closer to 147. Thank you, Bryce. 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, since we've got people all around the world. So then he turns around and comes back. And so now when he's coming back, it's the same crisscross type thing that Bobby and Scott claim when they were both going hunting, that they passed each other going the opposite way. So now, you know, he's still pushing the RAV4 this way. He's on the driver's side, so he's on the street side. The newspaper guy's coming this way, so closer to Bobby. He's saying he and Bobby eye contact, and that Bobby kind of stepped out into the road more to try and stop him. What he's assuming is that he was trying to stop him from driving. And so the guy went off the road into the little ditch there to keep driving and left. At that point, he doesn't know what to think. All right, this is just my theories, my thoughts, because again, we don't know for sure. All right, it's a salvage yard. Somebody's pushing a car, and he's saying he knows Bobby Dassey, or who Bobby Dassey is. So Bobby Dassey's pushing a car to the salvage yard. You know, if he doesn't know anything about Teresa Halbach at that time, it's whatever. But you're still freaked out by Bobby then trying to stop your car. So later that day, that is when the car is officially found by Pam of God. Later on in the 5th. Don't recall what time that is. If any of y'all have looked into that timeline and have the time. But it was Pam of God got to the Teresa Halbach's house late. Search parties had already gone out for the day, but they saved her to go to the salvage yard and gave her a camera and a direct line to the sheriff. And then Pam Sturm and her daughter went to the salvage yard. Earl was the one who was working. The rest of the Averys were all up at their vacation homes in Crivets. So it was Earl that was there who gave them permission to go search the salvage yard without a search warrant. And then she's able to find the car within 20 minutes, which is impossible unless somebody's told you where to go. When this hits the news that this car and all this, that's when this witness hears about it. So he reaches out to the sheriff's department to report that what he saw. It's a woman that he spoke to. And that woman said to him, "We know who did it." He leaves his information if they want to follow up, and they never did. So that's what we know. Theory. Because with people always saying that, why hasn't he said, why is he waiting till now? For all we know, this guy thought Stephen was guilty. The press, what's his face, Kratz, his press conference, everything was against Stephen. If you don't see Making a Murderer and see how all the evidence against Stephen is tainted, you're going to think he's guilty. So, for all we know, this guy then thought all those years that Stephen was guilty, and him reporting what he saw, they didn't feel was of any importance, or maybe they didn't believe him or whatever. So the guy just let it go. Then when he sees Making a Murderer, he decides to reach out after that to Strang and Buting, who were no longer Stephen's attorneys at the time, but he doesn't know who to talk to. He reaches out to Strang and Buting, leaves a message, nobody gets back to him. So, again, my theory would be he sees Making a Murderer, and now it's, oh my God, this guy is innocent. So that's why he would reach out to Stephen's lawyers to say, hey, this is what I saw. Nobody got back to him. So now, not being used for the original by law enforcement, and then reaching out to his lawyers, he's getting nowhere. Now we hear from Kathleen Zellner. We don't know when this guy reached out to Kathleen. Maybe he did it a while ago, because she can't put out there everything she has on this case. So maybe she's had not his testimony, but has his story, that maybe she talked to him a while ago, but it's been taking some time to fully flush it out. Because, as we're being told in from the affidavit, it's just this guy seeing it. There's no other proof than that. You got to remember, because I know there's been some things that people have said in MAM Gossip of, why didn't he take a picture? Well, this was 2005. Cell phones weren't what they are now. So he's not taking a picture. And also, we don't know at that time if he, other than Bobby freaking him out by seeming to try and stop his car, what's it going to take a picture of? Somebody pushing a car to a salvage yard? So we don't know all that Kathleen has from this guy's statement. She may know who this other person is already. We don't know. So when you don't have everything, it's understandable that people are going to come up with theories and talk about it and why this, why that. But as we've learned about this case since Making a Murderer came out, because that's when the bulk of us first came onto it, everything takes so much time. It's a lot of waiting for things. So, if you think it's difficult for you to have to wait around all this time for this information to come out, imagine being Stephen or Brendan. So we just don't know all that Kathleen Zellner has. So throw out your theories, but just know could be completely different than what you've thought. My theory on how the RAV4 got there is now completely blown away by this new evidence, by this new witness. So I had to try and rethink it, but I'm just a person. I'm not, I'm not a great legal mind. Go figure, and add your laugh emojis there. But that's what we do. We come up with these theories, but we just have to wait. And as soon as Kathleen Zellner, we got the Debbie Show here on Stephen Avery Project. As soon as Kathleen Zellner puts something out on it, we bring it to you as soon as we find out about it, period. Who cares, right? Bobby Dassey. Most everything that has come from Kathleen Zellner, from the evidence that she has found, points at Bobby Dassey. Does his mom know? I am of the belief that Barb doesn't know because she doesn't want to know. She's ignoring it. That signs are there, and she doesn't want to think any of her kids would do something like this. So I'm not somebody who's on the attack on Barb for that. I'm not a fan. There are some things that Barb has done that I believe was not looking out for Brendan's best interests. But I don't think Barb is somebody who knows what Bobby has done and is helping cover it up. I do not think that. But Scott, who was her boyfriend at the time, and she was quick to marry, I think he does know. And it's one of the theories going around is you still have that whole Sikaki letter saying the body was burned in an aluminum smelter at 3 a.m. on Friday morning. Scott's work has a smelter. So was Scott getting rid of the body for Bobby? And then Bobby was dealing with the car. Scott's dealing with the body. Bobby's dealing with the car. And then you have a third person. I do not believe that the person pushing the car with Bobby was Scott Taddock. The description does not match him. And I know there's a picture that's been posted places that is showing a profile picture that they're claiming is, a picture of Scott with a gray beard. And then that some people are saying that's not even Scott. And that's not a beard. It's a person who's got a cat wrapped around their face. You can't really tell because it's a fuzzy picture. And I have met Scott Taddock. I have been to his home. That picture does not look like Scott to me. I do not think from the description that is Scott Tadek. If something turned out that Kathleen puts out and it was Scott Tadek, I won't be surprised, because how well did this witness see the person that's on the opposite side and who he says ducked down when he was driving past? I don't know, because again, we don't have the complete story of what he saw. We've just got a quick little synopsis in an affidavit. So could it turn out to be Scott? It could, but by that description and by that picture that people are using, it's not Scott. My view. I can see people are talking about Brad Dassey. Okay, so who is Brad Dassey? Brad is Brendan's and Bobby's brother, but they have different mothers. So Brad Dassey is no relation to the Avery family. He is a child that his father, Pete Dassey, had prior to marrying Barb. And so the boys weren't really, raised together or anything like that. Brad is who, back when this case was going on, he worked with computers. And Barb was asking him to wipe the computer, Bobby's computer, that Barb, would say, we didn't even have internet when when the whole information came out on what was on that computer. So it's like, that computer's not Bobby's computer. Well, no, it's not Bobby's computer, because it's the family computer. And I'm sure that both Blaine and Brendan would use that computer. But the computer was at some point, in Bobby's room. Maybe it's been moved out at times, but it was in Bobby's room. That's why it is referred to as Bobby's computer. And when these searches were happening on this computer is only when Bobby is the only one home. So Barb is asking Brad to wipe this computer. Brad reported it to the police. And so here's the thing. Brendan adores his mother. And so anything his mom says, Brendan believes and Brendan will do. Barb holds the key to access to Brendan. So Brendan's dad, Pete, can't visit or talk to Brendan unless Barb says it's okay. So Pete has to be on his best behavior if he wants to have any contact with his son. Brad has to as well. But Brad has times when he lashes out because Barb has never treated Brad well. Not the entire time she's been a part of his life. He has been mistreated by Barb. But he wants to have contact with his brother. Now, yes, he makes music and he DJs and he does all that stuff. And so people will say he uses the case to further, his pursuits with music. And maybe he does a little, okay? But what matters to me is you can hear, if you listen to the Brendan phone calls, he wants contact with Brad. Brad is somebody who makes him smile and makes him laugh. And that should be the most important thing for when this poor boy is stuck in prison, that he should be able to have contact with his brother who makes him feel good, right? But Barb will keep Brad from Brendan. And Brad lives 4 minutes from the prison that Brendan is currently in. Now, I don't know the situation with visitations for Stephen and Brendan since COVID. I know here in Illinois, with the other people that I advocate for, there's been no visitations for a year, and they're talking about bringing back visitation this month. So I don't know if Brad could even visit Brendan right now. But if you don't kiss Barb's ass, she will not allow Brad to have any contact whatsoever. And after this latest thing that just came out, Brad has been posting on both his Facebook and his Twitter saying he believes that Bobby and Scott are guilty and he is just tired of dealing with the games with Barb. So you can see that all there. The family has seemed to be totally imploding since this came out. And it's something that I learned back in the day when I used to be friends with various family members, is they all basically hate each other. And then they'll come together for the case for the popularity and the money it brings them. And so the family has a closed, or I believe it's private too. So even if you search it, you can't find it. You have to have somebody send you an invite to it or such. That they even named using at the end of it project. You know, since this page is called Steven Avery Project, they put project at the end. So when people would search, back before they made it private, it used to just be a closed group, and then they made it private, I believe. I don't even know for sure. But so in that group in the last 2 days, because something that group has always said is you're not allowed to talk about Bobby, that they're going to defend Bobby, period. So if you post anything about Bobby in that group, they ban you from it and delete your post. And so now yesterday, several family members were on there just ripping apart Steven and saying awful things about Steven. There were 4 different family members in there saying bad things. And it's kind of funny how they don't allow anybody to say anything about Bobby, but Steven, who is their bread and butter to get attention for themselves, was fair game for them to say such awful things about him. And so then you've had some people or a couple different family members saying they're going to leave the Facebook group because of all this. It's just kind of a mess. And yes, that's what they said now, that there used to never be allowed any discussion on Bobby. And now yesterday they said there would be 2 threads to talk about this latest filing and that they could have civilized conversation about Bobby. But nothing negative because they're standing by Bobby and believe in his innocence. And then yet the family talked bad about Steven. And it went on for a couple of days. And then all of a sudden the whole thread would get deleted. But people have sent us the screenshots of all the discussion going on there. And we do have them posted in our subgroup, MAM Gossip. This is something we don't typically talk about here on Steven Avery Project. Because there's so many people who watch Making a Murderer. And they don't really delve deep into the case. And so they don't know stuff about the family. And they're just going off of making a murderer, and they feel bad for the family and want to support the family, and they get upset if you say anything negative about them. And trust me, been there, done that. I used to be somebody that, like I said, I was friends with those people. I've been to their homes. I liked them. And then once I saw that things were more about what the family members could get out of the fans of the documentary and not the innocence of these two guys, it was a big turnoff for me. And then I became like public enemy number one for the Avery family. So I've kept discussion on that whole part of this case all in MAM Gossip, pretty much. Not here on Steven Avery Project. Because also, let me tell you too, back when I used to talk to Steven and used to visit with him, he did not want the family drama put here. Steven and I would talk about things that his family were saying and doing, but he didn't want it out here. And he would also consistently tell his family to stop the stuff that they were doing in those groups. But the family doesn't listen. And the family doesn't care. Because as far as they believe, Steven is going to be in prison forever. So they don't have to listen to him. Steven told them several times he wanted them to shut their group down. Period. And they don't listen. Steven has told them, fine, you can have that group. Take my name off of it. They don't listen. And to be fair, Steven gets upset with me. The family tells him things that they claim I've said or done, which aren't true. And Steven gets mad at me. And then he'll tell me that he doesn't want me to have a Facebook page either. And I don't listen. We remain up. Steven Avery Project. Because we are consistent with our support that Steven is innocent. And there's nothing out there that is just standing by Steven and his innocence. The family have in their groups moderators who believe Steven is guilty. Or actually, they've got groups that is about discussing Steven being guilty. We don't discuss that because that's not a possibility. That is the one thing you're going to know for sure is Steven is innocent. If you're somebody who believes Steven is guilty, this is not the page for you. The family will say everybody's entitled to their opinions. They defend guilters more than they'll defend Steven. They defend Bobby more than they defend Steven. So they say guilters are entitled to their opinion. That's why it's okay that they have guilters in their group. But somebody's saying when Kathleen Zellner, the lawyer you want if you are wrongfully accused, puts things out pointing the finger at Bobby Dassey, no, you can't say that. No, you can't post that here. But feel free to talk negatively about Steven. That's okay. No. That will never be us. Steven doesn't have to be a perfect person. You don't have to like Steven. He's innocent of this crime. Just period. That's what it's about. It's not about trying to make Steven your friend. It's not about getting a letter from Steven. It is, something horribly wrong was done to this man. And you want justice. That's it. You know, there'll be the discussion on the cat that you learned about in Making a Murderer, where it is said that Stephen threw a cat into a bonfire. First of all, Stephen is not the one that threw the cat into the bonfire. Somebody else did. Stephen took the blame for it. But Stephen was there. And they were drinking and they're laughing. It's not cool. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't care if you were the one that threw the cat in the fire or you were just there. No. But it doesn't mean he murdered Teresa Halbach. Just means maybe you don't like him. Got it. That's fine. Period. Don't know how long it will be until Kathleen gives us more information on this latest witness and who possibly was with Bobby. Don't know how long that will take. Don't know how long it'll be until we hear anything from the courts. You know, it's something that you just know about our legal system here in the States, is that this legal system takes so long for everything to happen. So we just have to keep waiting it out. Kathleen Zellner will release information to us when she can. And whenever the courts speak out on this, we'll bring it to you as soon as it happens. It's just more of a waiting game. I mean, and so Steven Avery Project started back in December of 2015, right when Making a Murderer came out. Not by me, somebody else started it. And I took it over when he decided he had had enough and was moving on. So this page has been advocating for Stephen since then. There's times when there's all this attention on the case and there's tons of people here and, you know, all these articles to post and read and things to talk about. And then we go months and months without anything, you know, where we get then messages every day going, what's going on in Stephen's case? Is he out? And how are his parents? Those are our top questions. So it's, if there is something that comes out, we bring it to you right away. But lots of years or lots of time there's not. Debbie is asking, are we still doing the flyover video? That's what was scheduled for today, is that this was scheduled before Kathleen released this information. We were going to be doing a video today in the MAM gossip group, I believe, that about the flyover video and the cadaver dogs. And because of this, we are discussing this instead, and now we're going to reschedule that to be next week. So next Wednesday at this time, we'll discuss the cadaver dogs and the flyover video, unless something is still going on to keep current discussion going of, what's happening. We have been getting tips that have been sent to Steven Avery Project, and they're also being private messaged to me. I talked about this yesterday. I want people, for sure, if you have something true to this case, please reach out to Kathleen Zellner. Because there's nothing I can do with it. I forward the information on to Kathleen when I get it. But you should be reaching out directly to her with the information. I know there's people who get upset that people send information to Kathleen and say, you know, she's got this, she doesn't need our help. Well, that's not true, because the gravel pit bones are the example I will give you on that, because it was Carol Ann Fitzgerald who informed Kathleen Zellner that the gravel pit bones that had been in custody were signed out and given to Karen Halbach like they were Teresa's bones, when in trial Kratz said they weren't Teresa's bones. And Kratz had said that these aren't the bones you're looking for. Stephen never left the salvage yard. And so we're not going to talk about these bones over here, because if those bones over here are Teresa, then that means Stephen can't be guilty, because our timeline says he never left. So Carol Ann Fitzgerald reached out to Kathleen Zellner to say, hey, did you know this? And she didn't, because as far as Kathleen Zellner knew, she had an agreement with the state, the prosecution, whatever. She wanted those bones to do testing, because she had an expert who would be able to test those bones and get DNA from those bones. So she was being lied to by the prosecution, because they knew those bones were gone, that they gave them away. She wouldn't have known that if somebody doing their own investigating didn't reach out. So please, if you have something, send it to her. You may not hear back from her. She may not use it. Just send it her way. You know, we're getting information from people who knew Brendan at the time, people who said they saw Stephen Avery that day, not at the salvage yard. We're getting information from people who say they have reached out to law enforcement or lawyers before and nobody got back to them. And then we have people who have information and they're afraid to say, because, you know, if you don't say things the way that certain people want, people come for you. So there's plenty of people out there who know stuff. They've tried to come forward, or they're afraid to come forward. So all I ask is that you go and give it to Kathleen Zellner. That's all you can do. And if you don't hear back from her, you don't hear back. You know? It just is so upsetting to me that Stephen and Brendan have lost their total adulthood for something they are both innocent of. And to me, there is no denying that law enforcement has framed him for this murder. I personally do not feel law enforcement was involved in whatever happened to Teresa Halbach. But I do think they were making sure that everything pointed at Stephen. That some of them probably felt Stephen was guilty, but he would get away with it because they had no real proof and they had that lawsuit happening. So I do think there are people in law enforcement that did things to frame Stephen. But all the evidence that Kathleen Zellner puts out points everything at Bobby Dassey. Bobby Dassey had the motive. He's a sick, twisted mind who looked up disgusting things on the internet. Women being raped and murdered that looked like Teresa Halbach. He even looked up the name Teresa Halbach. Know from Stephen that Bobby always took notice of the other times that Teresa Halbach had been at the salvage yard. Bobby knew that Teresa was coming that day because it was his mother's car that was being listed for sale, and the boys were asked to clean the car because it was going to be for sale. So he knew she was coming. He looks up disgusting stuff on the internet. He claims he saw her. He was home. His story changes. Everything points to Bobby Dassey. Scratches on his back that he said was from a puppy. And Kathleen Zellner's experts say those aren't scratches from a puppy. They're from a person. Most of the Dassey family were in Crivets when the car was found at the salvage yard. Bobby Dassey was home. Everything points to Bobby. But the state, Manitowoc, had no interest in finding what really happened to Teresa Halbach. They wanted Stephen to go away, get out of their hair. 36 million reasons. Somebody just asked, could Bobby have planted the key? At this point, Bobby could have planted everything. Maybe law enforcement didn't plant anything. And it's just a weird coincidence that Lank and Colborne are the ones there when the magic key and magic bullet get found. Maybe Bobby planted those two. I would not be surprised at this point. Kathleen Zellner has a prior brief where she pointed the finger at Bobby for planting the blood in the RAV4. So, if he's planting the car and he's planting the blood, could he have planted the key and the bullet? Betcha Kathleen knows. But we just have to wait. We will keep believing in Stephen's innocence. We know Stephen is innocent. Yeah, the blood was planted with a Q-tip for sure. That whole, and I kept trying to say, okay, so if you've got a cut on your middle finger here, and you're putting the key in the ignition, and how does that finger even touch the dashboard there? How is that happening? How are you, oh, and it's a squiggle. How are you doing that? And how are there no fingerprints, yet Stephen's blood from a cut here is there in a couple other places in the car. That was, what was it that Kathleen had in a thing on the blood that was like on the floor, that it wasn't soaked into the carpet fibers? It was like flakes on top of it. So how do you not leave your fingerprints anywhere, but you leave blood? And how does that blood get on the dashboard? By turning a key. How does your finger hit the dashboard when you turn a key in the ignition in a car? But also does a squiggle? Blood was planted. Could it have come from the blood that was on Stephen's sink? Stephen says that one of his doors, somebody got it open. And he knew the blood was there, and then it was gone. He's the only one living there. He didn't clean it up. But now it's gone. So, yeah, if Bobby is going to plant the car and the blood, could he have done the key and the bullet? So maybe that's something that they should really be looking into. If, Link and Colborn and Fassbender and Wiegert, y'all want to try and repair your name, maybe you should have really been looking into Bobby. And then fingers wouldn't have been pointed at you for planting this stuff. Well, Fassbender and Wiegert, you're a different breed from what you did to Brendan to force that false confession out of him. And how do you get, I bring this up all the time because I'm not a lawyer. How do you get two people tried separately for the same crime by the same prosecutor, but the circumstances are completely different? Because there's no Brendan in Stephen's trial. Because at that point, Brendan isn't going to be parroting what they want. So they can't bring Brendan in as a witness. So there's no rape. And she's killed in the garage in Stephen's case. But then in Brendan's case, it's both of them are raping her in his bedroom and punching her and cutting her hair and slitting her throat and all this. And then the two of them together, she's still alive because she goes through all this and, still lives through it all. And then they carry her out to the garage. Garage is not right next to the trailer. So for all to see, they're carrying this woman to the garage and then they're shooting her in there and you find no DNA. There's nothing to prove that Brendan has been in that trailer, let alone Teresa Halbach. But they're both found guilty for something happening to Teresa Halbach. But in this one, it's in the library with the candlestick. And in this one, it's in the conservatory with a knife. I mean, by the same prosecutor. How do you do that? And Brendan was a 16-year-old boy with a low IQ. And they're claiming he was able to rape a woman while his uncle watches. Not a boy. Is that boy going to be able to have an erection? You really think so? And then where is any of that DNA? Just nothing. They needed Brendan to implicate that Stephen was doing something with Teresa Halbach because Brendan was allegedly with Stephen that night at a fire. And then poor Brendan, not understanding what they want him to say, then it becomes about, well, now have to say that Brendan was a part of it so they could get Stephen. There was never a mention of a gun, of shooting, until they're finding this magic bullet and they're claiming on something that they're saying is a partial skull fragment has this kind of curvature on it and had something consistent with lead or whatever that would be like a bullet. Not a gun expert. My boyfriend Jeff is. We've had this discussion on this gun before. I don't know if Jeff is watching right now. But I'm sure there's many of you out here who are gun enthusiasts. But the gun, this Glenfield Marshall rifle, whatever it is, I can't remember what the gun is now. This is not a gun that when you fired it would make a bullet go through the skull. And now I have a delivery coming in, so my dogs are going to bark their heads off right now. Because I'm so professional. So, and you don't even know if that skull fragment or is Teresa Halbach. There's... Stop. Mallory. Hey, get over here. Hey, Mallory. Mallory, get over here. Get over here. Mallory. I'm trying. She's not listening to me. Can you see my dog? I don't know if you can with the window. Mallory. Say hi. Now she comes over here. Say hi, Mallory. There's Mallory. So all the evidence that they have is suspect. And now she's putting her paw on me because she's begging me to let her go OUT so she could go chase this FedEx guy. Because now his truck's leaving and she's always so obsessed with chasing a truck. Okay, what about Teresa's boyfriend? He was a suspect. Not really. Ryan Hilgas, see, nobody was really ever a suspect. Because their focus was on Stephen from the get-go. There are things with Ryan Hilgas that seem suspicious. But he was, they never seriously looked at him. And I think if there was anything pointing truly at Ryan Hilgas, Kathleen Zellner would have found it and we would have heard about that at this point. So he's not a viable suspect for me. Everything that's come out points at Bobby Dassey. What exactly he did, that I do not know. Because there's no evidence to that. There's no evidence what has happened to Teresa Halbach. Because those bones have never been fully proven that that's Teresa Halbach. Plus, you have when they find these bones in the burn pit behind Stephen's garage, there's no pictures. That's like 101 when you find evidence, is you take pictures of it first. You don't pick anything up and move it. You take pictures. But their defense was Stephen's German Shepherd bear was chained up out there, and so they couldn't get near it. Eventually they got Bear out of the way. So how are you picking up and moving the bones then if Bear is still there? If you can't take a picture from a position where Bear can't reach and zooming in on things, how are you removing the bones then? You could have taken a few minutes and taken some pictures of the alleged bones, but you didn't. So how do we know that they were found there? Don't know. You've got the different sizes of the fire from people's testimony. The pictures that you see from the trial of the burn pit really make it look like the burn pit is farther away from Stephen's garage than it actually is. I have been there. I took pictures of it. That burn pit is way closer to the garage than you would think. The garage is built out of particle board, and then there's a propane tank on another side. So if you have a fire that is taller than the garage, as some of them have said at times, oh my gosh, it's right next to that freaking garage and propane tank. It's just, the whole thing is ridiculous. Ed saying the dogs detected bone fragments in a fire pit, it just scrolled away, a few miles away on a neighboring compound. This wasn't highlighted in the trial. Correct. There were bones found at the gravel pit, not the quarry, the Manitowoc gravel pit. And yes, Jay, bones were cut using a sharp instrument. They can see that. Debbie, will the state have to reply to this new motion, or will it just go with the rest to wait for the courts? I am not sure how this process goes. If we have a legal mind here that can fill us in on that, please do. But so I believe first we have to wait for Judge Flowers, or we have to wait for the judges to say it's okay to put it back down to the lower court. And then we'll have to wait for Judge Flowers if she thinks this evidence warrants anything. Which, I mean, and I'm just going to be honest. See, I always hate that because it brings me to Brendan's interrogation when they kept saying to him, what happened to her head? Be honest. Be honest. Oh, it's creepy 2 words. I don't have any faith that Judge Flowers will ever rule anything in Stephen's favor ever. And with this saying that this is a person who saw something and there's no absolute proof, as far as we know right now, there could be. I don't see Judge Flowers as doing anything favorable for Stephen's case. I really hate that in order for a case to proceed, it has to go back to the original judge who found you guilty and sentenced you. Because also, if that person is corrupt and just wants to protect the thin blue line, Why would they flip-flop? So that's not saying that this evidence isn't good evidence. This is not saying that Stephen isn't innocent. This says something on Judge Flowers. That she's just going to say, nope, deny. And take her sweet time in doing it. Anything to make those days tick by longer. Poor people lose all the time. And they're just going to keep punishing Stephen as long as they can. Because once he's out, heads are going to roll. I don't think negatively of Kathleen Zellner. I know she is a fantastic attorney, that it typically takes her like 15 years to overturn a wrong conviction. She's leaving no stone unturned and will fight for Stephen. And this getting denied, if it was to be denied, let me clarify that, is no reflection on her. Again, it all points back to Judge Flowers. I'm just going to keep on. All we can do is wait and wonder. So, I think that is it for today's live video. Let me again sum this up because I want to make sure, leave you guys with this again. It is okay to be investigating and trying to figure out who this 6 foot tall, looks to be in his 50s or 60s, bigger frame, puffy jacket, who that person was. But we don't know for sure, so don't find somebody guilty without having all the facts. Okay? And if you know something, please send it to Kathleen Zellner. Her website is KathleenTZellner.com. She has a page for Steven Avery's case there. And then she has a phone number and an email address that is just for this case. Also, if you wanted to donate money to Steven or for his legal defense, she has links on there on how you can do that as well. So, report it to her if you know something. Go through her if you want to donate money. If you want to really get into the dirt of this case, then join our closed group that's called MAM, which stands for Making a Murderer. MAM Gossip. That's where everything is. All the videos we have done when we've gone on Manitowoc field trips, where you can see the salvage yard when I walk the Pam of God path. You can see where I prove there's no way that the bus driver saw Teresa Halbach. We've got videos of Cuss Road, the deer camp, Teresa Halbach's house, where Teresa Halbach is buried, where the RAV4 was seen, the Senex station, where the guy says that he reported to Andy Colborn that he had seen the car over by the dam. So you can go into all of our past videos that are in MAM Gossip, when I typically go to Manitowoc like twice a year. And I drive around where the people want me to go show them. So that's MAM Gossip. Don't know when I will be live here on Steven Avery Project next. If something comes out in the next 24 hours, we'll be back tomorrow. I usually go live at 1 p.m. Central Time, Chicago time, unless something is breaking news and we do it at that time. So, and I do not know my next trip to to Squeaky Cheese. Oh my gosh, if anybody ever goes to Wisconsin, you need to get cheese curds. Cheese curds in Wisconsin, especially from the Mars Cheese Castle in Kenosha, Wisconsin, they are to die for. And you know they're fresh because when you bite them, they squeak. And every time I go to Manitowoc, because I pass through Kenosha on the way, I have to stop at the Mars Cheese Castle for some cheese curds. But you can get them all over Wisconsin. And also at the Mars Cheese Castle, you can get them, they have deep fried cheese curds there too. Oh my God. So awesome. Sorry, squirrel. Yeah. That's something if you look at our, any of our videos in MAM Gossip, it, for some reason, always turns into food talk. I mean, yeah, I'm a big girl. It's obvious I like food. But we talk about a lot of food when we do lives in MAM Gossip. So if I do go live here on Steven Avery Project, we do try to give you a warning, you know, so people can try and be here if they would like. One of our moderators, Christopher, he's very good at organizing all the events that we do. And Christopher is also organizing right now the second rally that we have planned for the end of July this year up at Waupun Correctional at Stevens Prison. We did it for the first time last year, and you know, it's hard. It was hard during COVID, but you know, some people came and we had a good time out there supporting Steven. So we plan to do it again this year, and I'm vaccinated now too. Woohoo! And but I did have Steven Avery masks that we had everybody wear last year when we were at Waupun. So Christopher has an event that's made here on Steven Avery Project for that rally for the end of July. So if that's something that you're interested in and want to be a part of, you could check that out in the events here at Steven Avery Project. So, all right, I'm out. I will be online, I'm sure, the rest of the day. It's what I've been doing for the last 3 days since this announcement has come out, and fielding everything that is going on. So we'll see if there's any more developments today. Thank you, everybody who's here and who's going to be here later when this is no longer live. And thank you, everybody who continues to support the innocence of Steven Avery. So, investigation continues. Talk soon.